Hello and welcome to today's show. This is Master Marc Zirogiannis. Uh, I am your host and I'm the editor-in-chief of Taekwondo Life magazine. We are a member of the Believe Network. Today we are following up on our last episode. We talked a little bit about something that's relevant to people, but also to martial arts practitioners, which were some of the restrictions and both sides of the self-defense statute that is pending in California, AB 1333. The response to the episode was terrific. We got a lot of feedback from both sides. Our goal was to present something that was, fair and balanced. I'm certainly not an expert in this area. I'm not a California resident, but we have been speaking to folks who are, and that leads me in. Today, we're going to be talking to Rick Chavez, who's the legislative director for the California Rifle and Pistol Association. Rick, thank you for talking to us. We're going to do a word from our sponsor, and then we're going to jump in. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for your online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with the odds, the stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Go to betonline.ag and you can use our promo code BLEAV for your welcome bonus. Rick, thank you for that. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for talking to us today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So, let me give you what my understanding is, and then you can tell me and tell our folks whether I have it at least reasonably right. And that is that there is a pending, it is still pending, although I understand it may be modified, legislative action in the state of California, AB 1333, which is designed, or at least what has been expressed, is that it's designed to be able to put upon potentially a victim of a crime outside of the home. I think that's significant. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know, but it's been emphasized that it's outside of the home. A duty to mitigate or to de-escalate a potential situation so that it doesn't lead to a homicidal situation. I've read both sides of this argument. It seems that there is a little bit of confusion about it, and I wanted to get your perspective. And I was hoping you also probably are more keyed in to be able to give us a sense of legislatively at what point and how close this is to either being passed or not.
Sure, no problem. So on to the latter part of your question. This is brand new legislation. It's not been in the committee yet, although, as you have said, it has been hotly contested in the hallways and in offices. There's been some support of it, to be fair, in the Capitol from a couple of groups that have been behind us, like Everytown and Moms That Demand Action. Yet the vast majority of this has been from a very broad coalition that is rising up and coming together against it because number one of the problems that or challenges we have in California, many of our bills are somewhat misleading in what we call the opening line or the bill title. So this bill title, when you look at from Assemblymember Zbur, is just crimes, homicide. So that's not normally where a martial artist or a person looking at what the rules are going to be for self-defense is going to look. A lot of people will just go by this. It's when we get into the definitions, and the devil always is in the definitions, that this changes the rules of self-defense by putting the onus on you, the victim, to retreat. And so in martial arts, concealed carry training, things like that, we do train people, I think, across the board to look at this as like levels of awareness. However, as we all know, the average person in any state doesn't do that. And so this really puts those people in a critical position. And that was the first thing I was going to say to you. As a former paramedic, responded obviously to things after the bad things have happened. And there's a couple of parts of this bill that really, really scare me. Before you get into the use of firearms or any knives or martial arts equipment, just thinking a person with just their hands and feet, whatever was with them, their shopping cart, their bag, what have you. This has some challenges. One of the challenges is it talks about a reasonable amount of force. And the definition, legal definition of reasonable is that which would cause a person of ordinary care and prudence to believe or act the same way under the same circumstance and conditions. That's what you're going to have to say to convince a jury. The problem is that definition doesn't always take into account that, what we all have seen and heard. There are certain times when the human body is pushed into a situation where your body is able to release a lot of energy through different hormones like adrenaline, et cetera. And, that's where you see the mom be able to pick up a heavy object that normally she would never be able to pick up, the elderly person being able to fend off an attack that you're like, how? Like, this is a person with a walker, barely makes it down my street. That happens. And the problem is in that person's mind, they're so scared that when they go to strike, they don't know how much force they're using. And that's reasonable under the current law. Under this, no, that could now make you guilty of attempted homicide or a homicide. And what you got to realize, homicide in of itself is not illegal or legal. It's murder that's illegal. But this is now setting that individual up for charges of murder when that was never the case. The other issues I think are very exhaustive in this is that it's asking people to do something that it's a nuance in this bill that I find very, very offensive. And that is, I'll just take my personal self. I have my grandson over. My wife is fighting a terminal illness. Those are both people that if they're on my front yard and somebody was to come and attack them, you want me? You're literally asking me to physically walk away. You're
Right.
on your own. That makes no sense. In fact, just think of what my neighbors would think of me.
Sure.
Like, you let them die, you let them get beat up, you let them, whatever happen. And secondly, I would have to live with that, which is almost a guaranteed PTSD situation. And this is where they're playing. This is, again, the tone deafness of part of our legislature is astounding to me, because California just overwhelmingly passed a proposition that said, hey, you got to start looking at the law-abiding citizen over the criminal. Criminals aren't going to do this. And then the last part, Mark, of this, and certainly not the least, is it's actually asking you under the point of being attacked to try to negotiate with your assailant of like, hey, I would like to run. Hey, I would like to get out. Anybody that's taken martial arts training
Sure.
knows at that point, that ship has sailed.
Right.
And so to say that is going to cause people to be able to, definitely in the civil case, to go, well, did you do this? No. Well, then you're guilty of this. And that's the other part of this that a lot of people haven't been engaging is this is the criminal side that's setting it up. But in California, then the families, people that knew whoever the person was that was injured or died, have the right to sue civilly. And that's not true in every state, but in this state it is. And so that sets that up too for a civil lawsuit. So not only did you save your family or yourself, but now you could lose everything you own in that lawsuit.
That's a great summary, and I think you raised some important issues. I think in the episode that I had published, one of the things we talked about is because this is pretty raw in New York because of the Daniel Penny case, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Most people in the
Right.
nation are. And again, that's a situation where a guy wasn't in his home, and for those that are unfamiliar with it, he was on the New York City subway, and he is a martial artist and a former Marine, and I believe he was a Marine, and there was somebody on the subway who was by all accounts, imminent threat to the people that were on that subway. There were people there that, I mean, not only by his body language, but by his words, he was talking about murdering people and killing people and physically threatening. And he was restrained by Penny. And as you indicated, Penny's restraint of him, he happened to also be on drugs, which was probably a partially or approximate cause of his passing away. And it's a sad situation, but Penny ended up being tried for manslaughter in the state of New York. Now, he ended up winning, which I think is a sensible decision, but that doesn't change the fact that you still have all of the financial issues, the difficulty, the public, a guy who probably should have been hailed as a hero, who ended up becoming the victim, and he probably wasn't in particular danger, but he was helping people who were. There were a couple of senior citizens who were on that train who were very thankful for him. So I agree with you. One of the things that was most disturbing to me about reading the law is when I read the intention of the representative, I did understand it, right? And his express comments were that we're trying to discourage vigilante justice, and I do understand that. I think anybody understands that. But when you place that on the victim, where now the victim automatically becomes uh, having to second guess being a good Samaritan or trying to protect their family, I think it is the world is a little bit upside down.
Well, and one of the things I try to point out all the time in my position for the organization I represent is public policy should be directed because we're trying to solve an issue, an actual threat, an actual problem. When you look across the nation, but especially in California, we have more laws on this than I think almost any other state. There has been no vigilante issue. There
This is
has been.
it's so great that you said that, because my next question for you was going to be is what was the impetus for this? Because again, in New York, I could see we have this issue that just came up. In California, I'm not familiar with it, but what was the basis for it?
There is no issue. In fact, I would argue just the opposite. We just had horrific fires in the Los Angeles basin, several areas, Malibu, Pacific Palisades, Altadena, Pasadena. Many prominent people, many everyday people, homes that have been passed on from generations. There was a lot of looting, people trying to come on the property, and residents stayed on their property, some of them armed with shovels, whatever, different things.
Sure.
Sure. No vigilante crowds, no crowds going out to hunt people down for looting. Everybody was law-abiding. There were no arrests made. And it's hard to argue like a higher stressed situation than, hey, I've lost my life and my home, all my memories, everything. And I'm sitting out here at 3 o'clock in the morning just to make sure whatever's left over doesn't get stolen. And these people were common everyday people that weren't doing anything. And so that's what I meant by tone deafness. It's like, why are
Sure.
we doing this?
Right. And what is more, there's a certain assumption of risk when you are
Mhm.
willing to take advantage of a terrible situation and try to loot or rob or take advantage of a person who's already in a situation where they're losing everything. And you have to say that at a certain point, there's an assumption of risk on that person, that what would they expect? You were talking about reasonableness. What would they
Right.
expect any reasonable person would do? And most would not certainly lay down. Most of the people that I know would certainly, people are going to fight, particularly for their homestead, for their family. And those are not happenstance. Somebody has made a conscious decision to be a predator in that situation. And again, I think the death of anyone is sad, but that is something where they have to live and die by the consequences of their decision. So
And I think there's two issues that gets lost, including when the media looks at this, and that is one, the person coming onto the property is a criminal at the point that they trespass onto the property. And then when they threaten bodily harm, like for a law enforcement officer, there are charges stacking up on this individual. And then to place the victim or the person trying to defend their family or people on their property into the position of, hey, you really need to think, you need to put all these things in. The criminal's not doing that. The criminal already has a tactical advantage. They've already made a decision. They're already moving forward. And this is one of those things that I look at, from cases around the world that we've watched over the past year that are very tragic. People go back and, play Monday morning quarterback and go, well, why'd they let the terrorist or why'd they let this bad person get to
right,
this point? It's because of laws like this that causes them to go, well, can I? Should
right,
I? And then it's over.
right. I agree with that. I agree. So tell me from a more of a housekeeping standpoint, two things. Number one is for us and obviously for those of us that are listening that want to track the progress of this bill. What is the best way for them to do that, to be able to see where in and out of California? Because again,
Right.
California, these states become trendsetters, right? Somebody sees something passes in
Mhm.
California, it could be New York next, or it could be almost anywhere next. So
Right.
how can people track the progress of this bill as it goes forward?
That's great. We update and have provide for the public through our organization at crpa.org. You can go to the legislative tab and you can look where any of these bills are. You can see talking points, comments, and exactly where the bill is every week and when it's going to committee. And if you choose, there are people across the country that then send letters in to these people and say, hey, I'm from out of state. I'm not going to come to the state if you do this. I'm not going to do that, like whatever they want to. And those are powerful because those start to click in and make them look at their constituents and say, yeah, this isn't a great idea, and we shouldn't do this. This bill will go through, and it's important to know that this bill will go through a public safety committee in the assembly where it originated, and it'll go through a fiscal committee and then a judicial committee, and then it will move to a floor vote, and then it will go into the Senate House and do the same thing before it goes to a combined vote. So there's about 7 opportunities to um, terminate this bill so it doesn't go any further. And so we're trying to do everything before it even goes to the first committee to get the public outrage enough that the author realizes, number one, this is not a necessity. And number two, this isn't what something you want to do. One of the things that I always have a fear with some of these legislators is sometimes I think they write legislation like this to get the public in an outroar to make a name for themselves.
Sure. Sure. And that's understand and I get it. I get it. What do you think? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but based upon your time in doing this legislative work, what do you think the likelihood is that this will pass? And second part of that is if it does pass, what is the likelihood that it will be modified before it passes?
I think it's definitely going to get modified. He's going to try to modify it. One of the things that he's realizing is we have martial arts groups, we have retirement communities, we have the State Sheriff's Association, law enforcement, all aligned. And not that they don't align, but when you start to look at the vast coalition of people coming together against this bill, it number one, it outweighs the those supporting it by several fold. And number two, that makes it very hard for the governor to sign something in. And that's the other thing. It can go all the way to Governor Newsom's desk. Governor Newsom's very aware of where the California has. He's changed his position on some things. And I think there's going to be some pressure from the governor's office already from how much is coming up. So this bill may get gutted and amended, as we call it in California, and changed into something else.
Well, that's great. We will link in our show notes your legislative tab, and we will keep people informed. And I certainly, you have my email. I would love
Yep.
if you could let me know if there's anything new and exciting, and certainly if the bill, either passes to talk about what form it passed in, or if it doesn't, to let us know. And certainly, I would love it if there's anything that you think is ever relevant in terms of the work that you do from legislative work and that overlaps with us. You're always welcome here as a guest. And like I said, in the from almost the moment that I posted the episode, we posted in a number of different places, both video and audio. I was just amazed that it was one that we didn't heavily have even time to promote it. People were, and it tells me that, there's a lot of good people that have good, sensible, as martial artists, we always train. And the idea is, we train. I always tell this to the parents, right? Parents get worried. My kids are going to learn martial arts and they're going to learn to fight, or they're going to be a bully. I say, no, it's the opposite. We learn
Mhm.
to be able to do it so that we don't have to. But in the event that occurs, I'm not as concerned about the outcome for the person who's the aggressor and the predator. When it comes to that point, we need to protect ourselves, and I tell that to my students and the people that I've always trained with, because someone's made a conscious decision, and if it comes down to you and them, I'm not so generous of spirit that I choose them over me or over my family members. So
Right. And I think it's really important for the public to understand that, whether it be the martial arts, whether it be those of us who, I do practice martial arts as well and have for a few decades, but I'm also a holder of a concealed carry permit. We all train to never, ever, ever have to use it. And when you talk to the FBI stats over the last 25 years, it clearly shows we are the most law-abiding and safest people in the public. So
absolutely.
when we see bills like this, we're like, okay, so let me get this right. You're coming after the safest people in the public instead of the people causing the problems.
Right. Absolutely. I think you nailed it. So, Rick Travis from California Rifle and Pistol Association, I really do appreciate you talking to us. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. And is there anything you want to close with, or?
No, just thank you and keep up the great work.
Thank you. You as well. And I look forward to speaking to you further. And I look forward to hopefully tracking this one into the ground. So this bill into the ground, to go on to bigger and better things to think about rather than sensational stuff. So thank you very much. Have a
You're
great
very
one.
welcome. You too.
Thank you.